Well, welcome back to the Canadian Virtual CFO Conference. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. We're going to start in a couple of minutes here just to make sure that people get to the right spot. And I know there's another session that is just wrapping up as well. So we're going to do that and wait till that other session is there and people are coming to here to the main stage. So hopefully you're enjoying today's event. It's been a great time to network, a great opportunity. I've had a chance to meet some people in the networking area. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet some people also either in the networking or at one of the sessions or also in the expo area where we have still sponsors and exhibitors around. So we're just going to start shortly here. If you're just coming onto the main stage here, we'll be starting in about 1 or 2 minutes here and I'll introduce the panel. I just wanted to make sure that people know where to come and just to wrap up from the session that we just had as well. And thanks for being here today at the Canadian Virtual CFO Conference. Lots of great opportunity to connect and so on. So I'll just give it another minute or so as I just see people coming onto the stage here. And great to have the panel with us. And you'll have a chance to ask questions as well if there's anything you want to know from the panelists or any topics that you want to talk about. And maybe have somebody give their perspective on things, by all means, throw them in the event or in the stage chat. So we're just about another 30 seconds away from starting. And we will get going very soon. Hopefully you've also had a chance to take one of our polls as well. It's in the event link and you can, it's one click. There's a number of questions there. You can just throw them in, answer them. It's very easy to do. And we have some questions about which of the government programs benefited you most. What's your biggest challenge as a CFO? And also for your career as CFO, what do you need the most assistance with? So make sure to answer those questions. So let's get going. Again, if you are just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Hopefully you've had a great opportunity to connect with people. We actually tack on an extra 10 minutes at the end. So while the panel will go until the top of the hour, so about half an hour from now, we actually put on another 10 minutes or so in the event so that you can use that to go into the expo, do some networking and so on. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelist. Sanjay Puri is Vice President, Administration and CFO at Humber College. Thanks very much, Sanjay, for being on today. And why don't we start with you, and it's nice to see you again. Why don't we start with you and talk a little bit about what you do, what your role is, and a little bit about your background as well.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity. As you said, I work for Humber College. Humber College is the largest college in Canada at this present time, with about 30,000 full-time students, about 200 some odd courses that we offer. And all in all, about 55,000 part-time students who are actually educated through the Humber College as well. We're situated in the city of Toronto with 6 other post-secondary institutions, 4 universities and 3 other colleges. And with the world changing with the COVID, how, I guess, education was depended upon or being delivered has all been disrupted in terms of people have been learning online and have been learning remotely, whether in the country or away from the country. And we're sort of going to, getting our footing, not only getting back into the business of teaching and learning, but in terms of how people learn, and at the same time, what kind of skills are people requiring. So interesting times ahead for a CFO as to, how are we going to innovate? How are we going to basically invent or advent our infrastructure, which has predominantly been mostly physical infrastructure, to developing technology and focus on user experience. And look to do things differently into the future. So with that, a lot of things have happened over the last 15 or 18 months, but as a CFO, I'm more focused on in terms of the short-term, medium-term, long-term. Short-term, more about the cash flow, medium-term, more about in terms of developing the vision and looking at in terms of what our strategy was and as to whether it's still effective or the way as we need to move forward, and then developing the long-term as to what the business or the opportunities will bring to us and how we're going to get there in the realm of what people or our customers want. So interesting times ahead.
Yeah, really disrupted because of the pandemic, the whole industry, right? So we'll talk about that as well. Yeah, education and so on. So we'll come back to that. But thanks very much, Sanjay. And Marc Goldreich is CPA, Chief Financial Officer at Firm Capital Apartment REIT. welcome, Marc. Thanks for being here. And same thing, if you can tell people a little bit about what you do and what Firm Capital Apartment REIT is all about.
Yeah, for sure. And well, thank you, Marc, for inviting me to the panel. I'm very excited about the opportunity. Again, as you mentioned, I'm the CFO for Firm Capital Apartment REIT. We are a TSXV listed REIT that invests solely in apartment buildings in the United States. And my role, I oversee the asset management, accounting, IT, HR, acquisition activity, and try to implement strategy for the visions of the CEO and the board of the organization. And as Sanjay mentioned, because of COVID-19, there are implications in terms of tenants being able to pay rent, in terms of going and observing in the short and medium term about the sustainability of the REIT and are being able to grow as an organization. And obviously, we have to fulfill the requirements of the venture, but also at the same time to show and give benefits to our unit holders. So in the long term, we want to take advantage of different opportunities and use the challenges of COVID-19 to try to strengthen our organization.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being on. And again, if you're just joining, you can ask questions in the event or in the stage chat. I'm happy to moderate them as well live, anything that you want to know, advice, suggestions, and so on. So Sanjay, why don't we start back with you? You talked about, obviously, Humber. First of all, I didn't know this until just a few minutes ago about Humber College being the largest college in Canada. That's fantastic. I had no idea. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that either. Maybe didn't really think of which one would be, but the fact that you brought it up. But there's 3 campuses as well. Maybe you can talk about how do you manage, is all the accounting centralized? Do you have accounting in the different locations? And how do you manage a location organization through accounting, accounting and financial issues that you might have in that, and how do you deal with them?
So thank you, Marc. You're absolutely right. The VP Finance and Administration as well. So my portfolio is much bigger than just the finance as well. So I look after all of the ancillary administrative services. So from residents, food services, parking, safety, to planning, all of those other areas are going to fall under my realm of responsibility as well. That being said, we are very much centralized. Even though we're the largest, again, we are nestled in between 7, as I mentioned, other post-secondary education, entities or institutions. You got University of Toronto, York University, Ryerson in the city of Toronto, all within a geographical, I'm going to say, distance of about 50 kilometers from water all the way to the Steeles and from, Etobicoke all the way to the east in Scarborough. And they're vying for, all the students and what we're going after. And what we sort of can rely on is our programs and the experience. So why we're the largest and most applied to college. And again, I wouldn't call ourselves a college. We're more what I would consider to be somewhere in between a college and a university. So what we do is we do about 70% of our education in theoretical terms, like a university would do mostly. And about 30% of it is on hands, on the job, sort of like simulated learning. So the previous spokesperson talked about in terms of the, Stephen said, created work cases or cases to learn or affirm whatever you learn in the classroom. And that's how the polytechnic education in the Humber College happens. We've got just as many labs as we have the classrooms. So basically what you're doing is you're creating the second tier or the second level of educators. In this case, we don't go after the lawyers, engineers, and doctors profession. What we go after is the people who assist the lawyers, doctors, and engineers. So we have the dental assistants, we've got the nurses, we've got the practical, support workers, we've got the carpenters, we've got all the skills trade where they are basically skilled with their hands, but also rely on the knowledge. You're not going to work as a draftsperson unless you have a knowledge of physics and mathematics. So the emphasis is just as much on education as it is on learning on the job. And with about 200 some odd courses that we offer, there's a breadth and the depth of. But as I was saying before, we are not number one or most applied to because we just stay, static in our approach. You're looking out 3 years, we're looking at 5 years, we're looking at 20 years and saying, what kind of jobs are going to be required. And it's not as much as the jobs, because they haven't been invented, as you heard as many a times. People have said the jobs of the future are not even known as of yet. What we're doing is we're embedding the learning behavior or the good skills into the curriculum now, that the people are learning how to think for themselves, how to apply whatever they have learned or seen through internet or wherever else, and then have that capability of basically taking the information and apply to whatever the situation might be. So we're focusing on teaching them how to think, how to do things into the future. And that's what's making that college being the most successful, because we have no idea. We'd be foolish to say, jobs 5 years from now are going to be in this area, in this area. All we know is they're going to be connected with technology. They're going to be connected with science. And how do we take that sort of a fuzzy and an opaque picture and bring it back and say, what are we going to teach students today, and how we're going to invest in a classroom, what the class size would be. And there's so many different components. I don't want to get into the details, except it's not simple when you start to break down. And that's what the job of a CFO is. You're looking at a 360-degree thinking. It's not just about accounting. That tells me what happened last week, last month, last quarter. What it doesn't tell me is what's going to happen in the future, unless you understand the story behind it, why we got what we got, and then to use those and to, sort of predict the future by doing certain actions. And that's where I find, my job or my staff's job becomes a lot more interesting than just basically accounting for whatever has happened in the past.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Sanjay. Very interesting perspective on the business, right, of college and school. So, Marc, I wanted to talk about going public for those that are watching, and maybe you can share some thoughts. When is the right time to go public? What are the issues? What are the challenges that you have being a public company? Your observations from that.
Sure. So obviously the major advantage of being a public entity is the ability to raise capital through the public markets on the exchange. So people buy stock your organization. With that comes government legislation in terms of accounting requirements and disclosure requirements, and which are intensive. So for accounting purposes, we issue financial statements every quarter using IFRS, which is time consuming and requires an annual audit. So the fees associated with being a public company could be extensive, and each organization will have to decide on their own when the appropriate time is to go from a private organization to a public organization based on their capital needs and based on how quickly they want to grow the organization.
Okay, terrific. Any other pitfalls, mistakes that maybe people should avoid?
Well, I think people have to. I know a lot of times people view it as it's very exciting to go public, to grow the organization very quickly, but sometimes an organization could grow too quickly. And instead of growing in stages based on the current portfolio or through private investors, to go through the public markets, it requires a lot of time, energy, and resources that might be beyond the capabilities of a small organization at that point. So as a result, it would be prudent for everyone to kind of think twice is this realistic for my organization at this point versus what are the long-term ramifications in my book.
Awesome. Thanks. Really interesting perspective. And if you have any questions about going public, feel free to put them in the event and they're in the stage chat as well. If you're watching, if you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Marc Goldreich is CPA, Chief Financial Officer at Firm Capital Apartment REIT. And Sanjay Puri is Vice President, Administration and CFO at Humber College as well. So thanks to both of you for being on here as well. So maybe Sanjay, you're over to you, and that is, what makes what kind of issues do you come across as CFO, and including the administration portfolio that you were talking about? What kind of issues are you dealing with? You mentioned a few already, but other ones that you perhaps have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
So not of a typical CFO you would think about, or the administration part takes a lion's share of my responsibility or my time. You can well imagine, you got 30,000 students on the campus, and it's a small city to some degree, and the type of things that are happening in the city are just wide, and you're looking at in terms of the experience, and like you said, you got so much competition, and you're working through all of the nuances. So working through the one and first and foremost, who are the drivers of the academics and the organization, right? So working with them much more closely, also looking at the student services, because as much as you're learning inside the classroom, the learning is also happening outside, where the students are involved in a lot of different activities, and they're making their future networks and their connections as well, and having those safe and inviting places where the students are there from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And how do you keep them safe? How do you keep all of the behind the scenes components? We've got 3 million square feet of space that is monitored on an ongoing basis. As I said, we're somewhat blessed, but at the same time, situated in a certain part of the city that attracts a lot of the, I'm going to say, elements, and making sure that we're always on top of, behind the scenes, not becoming overt. It requires a lot of the, I'd say, attention, but working collaboratively and collegially. So I think Stephen talked about in terms of the closets that may be, or the hidden things that may be sitting in the closet, talking, because you cannot as a person know everything that's happening in an organization as big as ours. So working with our peers, working with my direct reports, making sure things on a risk basis you're looking at, and trying to keep on top of it, and measuring things, and at the same time incrementally just getting better at what we are doing as technology lends itself, as new way of thinking comes about, as new way of process enhancements happen. All of those are sort of kept at the forefront of it to make sure that we don't give up on opportunities as they come along. So as a CFO, again, I take my learning from the CPA profession and the CMA profession that I did, and bringing back that again, I go back to that 360 integrated thinking. It's not about the finances, but again, mostly around why did you get what you got, and looking for that story within the story, and trying to basically then share that story with the other people in order to enhance and continuously improve our operations. You're on mute, Marc.
Sorry about that. Thanks. Aaron was talking and I didn't realize I was on mute. So always the making sure that things are good. So that was great perspective, Sanjay. So Marc, why don't we talk about technology? Sanjay just talked about technology as well, and what he's seeing and so on. But how it almost seems like since COVID, like there's something new in technology that comes up almost every week. Something new you got to look at, evaluate. Does it make sense for me? Does it work for you? Is this right for our industry? And so on and so forth. So what are you seeing? What has helped you? How do you evaluate? What technology did you change what technology you're using through COVID? Any advice that you would give to other CFOs and so on? What are your perspectives on that?
For sure. I think that during COVID, the real estate industry in general was a little bit behind in implementing different technologies, and whether it's real estate on the site level, whether it's from the REIT level, and a little bit behind the times. And as a result of COVID, we were forced to invest more in our CRMs, to find data, and to make ourselves available what the different resources are in the industry. And as a result, like for some examples, rent collections, we would walk around with POS terminals. If some of our buildings didn't have online leasing, on online rental collections, we had to implement those, and those were very beneficial to our organization. And we use a management software called Yardi, and again, implementing whatever was available, and it was very beneficial to our organization because we would be able to become much more efficient. And coming out of COVID, when the economy has been improving, we've noticed that we've been more efficient, and we've been able to adapt much quicker because of the data that's available in the marketplace. So for other CFOs within the real estate industry or in general, obviously we have to be careful not to go too quickly, but the technology is a major resource, and especially for younger employees, they were able to bring to the forefront some different tips or advice that could obviously go up to the CFO level, and we've been able to implement that, and then that was obviously beneficial to our organization.
If I can add to that, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not only the investment in technology, I think we were able to get online relatively quickly. I think, the change management that people were sort of pushing back on to say, well, it'll take us 3 years to get there. Well, it happened because the circumstances made it so. But what I would say is, in my perspective, I'm seeing the user experience has been sacrificed. So at this point in time, yes, we're connected, but we're not necessarily, our business processes are aligned to those kind of things. The automation that should be or could be in place has not been necessarily leveraged. So a lot of the workflow, right? The invoices used to come into accounts payable, and the invoices would be routed by the alphas to the accounts payable clerk, and they would then basically enter it and so on and so forth. Well, now with the mail not coming in, we basically ask the suppliers to send everything electronically, which was always there. But in the past, in terms of how do you do it, and do you scan it after you get it, and how do you route it internally to get the approvals and stuff? Like all of those things, I'm just finding, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to look at our business processes as a result of the technology that has been implemented, that the CFOs can take a lead on, and seeing how can we make it better user experience for internal stakeholders as well as for our clients, which could be, again, in my case, it's students or the vendors or the suppliers that we deal with. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Marc, what's your top issue right now in your organization?
So I think we're still focusing on rent collections in terms of getting out of COVID-19. A lot of tenants across the board have lost their jobs and are unable to pay. So we have to look jurisdiction by jurisdiction, state by state, to know what our rights are and what our obligations are from a legal perspective, and see how could we collect the rent, how could we progress forward we could present financials that are improved, and then gain confidence in the investment community.
Great. And Sanjay, how about you? What's your top challenge right now?
Few. First of all, mostly in the finance area, is the staffing. Because I see, or I'm starting to sort of see that the first people who are basically being sought after coming out of the pandemic are the accountants or the technology people. So IT and finance people. I've had a bit of a turnover in my staffing level because people are looking for ways to get out of the pandemic, and the way they're seeing it is accounting and IT solutions. The second one is that innovation piece as to what that means for the future and the investments we need to do. As we're looking at in terms of new way of learning and delivering, people have tasted blood. They don't want to necessarily come back to the campus for everything. Again, you're not going to know about a dental assistant program and do work on becoming a pastry chef unless you are in the campus itself. But the theory that goes with it could be done whenever I want to, however I want to, and wherever I want to, sort of kind of concept. And how is that going to be supported, not just through technology, but the back-end infrastructure? So we're thinking about flipped classrooms, record the lectures and send it off, and the classrooms become, or the designated times become, interactive time and application time, rather than having to regurgitate and throw the content at the students. And looking at it and then changing our spaces, which were predominantly used to be classroom. Well, maybe they need to be now TV studios. I don't know. Where the people would come in, the instructor will come in and actually teach, not just basically the students inside the class who choose to come or show, but also the ones who are actually coming out online. Sustainability. Again, 3 million square feet of space. As a CFO, I'm thinking about what sort of kind of future are we looking at? The carbon footprint that we have. Sustainable, 30,000 people, the garbage that we actually create on a daily basis. So far much more than I would say the debits and the credits and the accounting side of things, but more the operational and holistic. And then doing the bench, the good components is the learnings that you have from your education. with respect to being able to, as a SMART goals, right? If you measure it, you will do something about it. And again, we start out by basically measuring against ourselves, and then we go out to the industry. And what I find, industry standards are not necessarily available, or people are very shy to share them. So again, opportunities beyond belief. How do we, monopolize them? I guess would be to the institutions and the people in them as to how they leverage this.
Very good. Yeah. Marc, over to you. And a question that has come up is, what would you tell your younger self from a career perspective? Getting when you were younger and now knowing what you know now, because we have people that watch that are maybe junior CFOs, or maybe their next step is in their careers are to be a CFO. What would you tell yourself? What would you go back, or what would you tell younger CFOs or prospective CFOs?
Right. Well, I think in terms of being a good CFO, which I think the precursor to that question is to have a very thorough understanding from the bottom up of an organization, and to know how the impact of one decision from even a junior analyst or junior accountant all the way up impacts the organization, and that they know that if they offer a suggestion that it could impact the organization. And then when they move up through the ranks, to kind of build on those experiences. And so when I go and make a decision, I would be able to go all the way down to the different areas of the company, and know the function of each individual person. Could we have a small organization? But for a larger organization, to know the different functions and to know how they get built up and how they correlate together. So what I would tell my younger self is to really focus on to know how I'd be able to create value at each segment of the organization, because later on I'd be able to come back and to know who's responsible, what areas could we improve, what areas are we doing well. And I believe that's something that's very important, especially in the real estate sector, to kind of read and react to every situation, and a thorough understanding of each member of the team is very helpful for the benefit of the whole team.
Excellent. And Sanjay, we have maybe time for one more question, and this is sent in, posted by Alec, who has asked, Alec Fernandez, and thanks. Sanjay, do you see a change in the fee structure with students doing more online than in class? This is, of course, a hot button topic. So what's your take on that, Sanjay?
In the short run, I don't see much change happening. The reason being, our tuition is a reflection of in terms of how much we receive from the government as a grant. At some point in time, the grants used to be, about the lion's share, about the total funding. But over time, the government grants haven't changed since 2009 in terms of value. So inflationary, they're down about 25%. At the same time, tuitions have been cut through regulations because they are mandated and regulated. They have been cut as well. And we've been doing less and less and less, where the cost pressures are going up by to the tune of about 5% each year. And it becomes very, very difficult. So what the colleges and universities have been doing is looking for other, I'm going to say, revenue, monetization opportunities. They're getting into ancillary businesses. They're doing international students and things of that nature in order to keep the infrastructure and the overhead sort of in place. In the short run, the tuition is pretty much paying for what I'm going to say is the operations. So whether you have the students online versus they are, our cost structure hasn't necessarily changed, right? The 3 million square feet of space is not going away. The number of instructors that we have is not necessarily changing, unless somehow through collective agreements we can say, instead of a classroom of 50 students will become now 60 or 70, whereas you have a reduction in salaries, and then you can basically, adjust the tuition fee. So over time, I see new models developing, but over the next 2 to 4 years, I would say, as we evolve through this new world of insurance, of how people will be learning and educating. What I will say to Alex is the 4-year degrees and the 3-year degrees are becoming more of a passé now. People don't want to come to school, as I was talking to Marc before. I learned a lot of accounting, but I only applied 10% of it for the last 25 years because I got into a certain sector where my transfer pricing, my consolidation skill sets were never used or applied. What's happening is now people are basically going to micro-credentials. I will go and learn whatever skill I need whenever I need it, and I want it in a bite size. If I want to learn about HTML, if there was a need in my job, I will go and learn it then. I will not basically go out and do a 4-year degree with the hopes that I will get a job in that field into the future. So as small bite-sized courses and need to, have learning when I want it, will have an impact in terms of the pricing and the content. And the last but not least is this open platform. You can go to Google now and get a 6 months certificate and get an $80,000 job as a programmer or data analyst. Why would you want to go to universities and college? When the prospect of getting a job would be difficult. So the whole, as I said about disruption, I think that's the middle name for every institution of a post-secondary education, which hasn't been disrupted for a long time, just basically got noticed or put on notice that they better look out. So I'm not sure whether I answered Alex's question.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Good perspective for sure. Well, we're out of time, so I'm just gonna wrap up. And thanks for that, Sanjay and Ulrich as well for your question. Wanted to thank you both for being on the panel. I want to thank everybody for coming to today's event, the Canadian CFO Conference. Today's event presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, and powered by EventLogic.ca. My name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panelist, Marc Goldreich, is CPA Chief Financial Officer at Firm Capital Apartment REIT, and Sanjay Puri is Vice President Administration and CFO at Humber College. How did you like the event? Let us know. We'll send you a survey to complete after the event in the next 24 hours or so. Make sure to fill it out. It gives us some good feedback as to how we can improve for the future. I want to thank all the speakers, the panelists, the team as well, behind the scenes, Alex, Rachel, Ann, Sandra, Sarah, Carla, and many more. So I want to thank everybody for getting together to put this event together. TorontoJobs.ca, if you do have any staffing needs, feel free to email sales@TorontoJobs.ca. TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you know somebody, feel free to visit the website, TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, and EventLogic with a K.ca. If you know of any organizations that would like to sponsor, exhibit at, or speak at an upcoming event, make sure to visit the website, EventLogic.ca, and Gahuza. It's a new way of recruitment, and it's coming soon. So I did post up a number of upcoming virtual events as well in the chat. You want to check out TorontoJobs.ca/news for information about upcoming virtual events. There's 14 or 15 virtual events a month going on right now. So make sure to check it out. There's something coming up. We have a lawyers conference. We have a sell your business conference. We've got lots of great events as well. And just make sure to check it out. You can check out the link and you can stay connected with all of TorontoJobs.ca on our Linktree account, and also EventLogic with a K.ca for other information. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I've also put in, we have lots of great accounting and financial groups and pages on social media. So make sure to join them. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can join, you can connect with other CFOs and senior financial people. And again, we tack on another 10 minutes at the end of this event, so you still have some time to network through our speed networking area, visit our expo, and much, much more. I want to thank you again for everybody for coming. Really appreciate your time, and Sanjay and Marc as well for taking the time and sharing your experiences and so on. So have a great day. Stay safe. All the best.
Thank you, Marc. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marc.